The member for Simcoe Grey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that in the opinion of this House, the Minister of Finance should immediately move to have a standing committee investigate the legislative and regulatory barriers and burdens facing service clubs in Ontario who serve their respective communities and conduct ongoing community service which helps alleviate the demand for publicly funded services. The committee shall focus on the following topics: 1. Financial audits, 2. Restrictive regulations surrounding fundraising, 3. Taxes and fees, and 4. Declining membership. That the committee shall have the authority to conduct province-wide hearings and undertake research, and generally shall have such powers and duties as required to investigate the issue. That the committee shall present an interim report to the House no later than September 1st, 2015, and a final report no later than January 1st, 2016. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Wilson has moved private member's notice of motion number 16. Pursuant to Standing Order 98, the member has 12 minutes for his presentation. The member for Simcoe Grey.
Well, thank you. Thank you, and I want to thank the overwhelming number of my colleagues that are here today. It's an important. Thanks, Lou. I know I'm going to get your support too. So we're here today, colleagues from all sides of the House, to talk about an important issue. It's an issue that I don't think has been given enough attention over the years, and it's an issue that I would think this government in particular, considering the amount of debt that they have, would be keen to address because of the vast benefit these organizations bring to our economy. The issue we're talking about, of course, is the important role service clubs play in communities across Ontario, and the role the government can play to assist these clubs to maximize their full potential. A lot of people think service clubs have the same tax benefits and rules as registered charities, but the fact of the matter is that for the most part they don't, and that's what I'm going to discuss now. Mr. Speaker, centered around such mottos as service above self, that's the Rotary, We Serve Lions, serving the community's greatest need, Kin Canada, Friend of Youth, it's the Optimists, serving the children of the world, it's Kiwanis, and We Share, which is Quota International, we can all agree that these service clubs and others bring vast benefits to our communities. First and foremost, they are social clubs. They bring fellowship and fraternalism to their membership, which in turn strengthens the communities they serve. For young professionals or people that are new to a community, social clubs bring those people together to maximize a community's potential gain both socially and economically. Second, beyond fellowship, these volunteer organizations serve the community need. Made up of people that live and breathe in the communities they serve, service club membership best understands their community's intrinsic values and needs and fills the fiscal holes that government and other agencies can't. It's important to remember that the charitable work that these organizations do helps to alleviate the financial burden on government coffers. Governments can't and shouldn't pay for everything. In Ontario, the debt has become the highest in the country. The deficit is more than all other provinces combined. On top of this bleak fiscal reality, population projections are forecast to shift the province to an older age structure, which will certainly bring with it additional financial pressure. According to the Ministry of Finance, Ontario's senior population is expected to double over the next 25 years. Mr. Speaker, Ontario already spends 41% of the provincial budget on health care, and according to TD economists, this is projected to increase to 80% by 2030. It's unsustainable, and to prepare for the future, we need to consider alternatives like fostering the working relationships we already have in our communities. Service clubs relieve the financial burden while providing intrinsic social benefits to the communities they serve. They are a win-win, which is why it is so important that we as legislators make it as easy as possible for them to continue to do the good work they do in our communities. I chose to do this motion on service clubs after I hosted a local roundtable in my riding last April. People from various organizations attended, and frankly, I was surprised to learn about the multitude of issues and challenges they deal with on an ongoing basis that hinder their everyday operations. Immediately following the meeting, I wrote to the Minister of Finance to articulate as best I could the challenges identified. To date, my records show that I've not received a response, but to give the Minister the benefit of the doubt, the issues are complex and I will presume that the government is still thoroughly investigating the matter. I'm also looking forward to hearing from members of the government side and the NDP, and hopefully we'll get some answers from the government today. I brought that letter with me today, Mr. Speaker, as it identifies many of the challenges and issues that service clubs face, and I'd like to read it into the record. April 25th, 2014, dear Minister, I'm writing to you today after meeting with local service clubs in my riding concerning a number of issues they have identified that are hindering operations. The main message that came out of the meeting was a concern with the cost of doing business as a result of increased regulations, taxes, and fees. Let me briefly touch on each of these issues. The first issue discussed was financial audits. If a service club earns more than $50,000 after expenses on a fundraiser, they must pay $4,500 for an audit. If a service club earns less than $50,000, the audit is $450. As a result, service clubs limit their fundraising. As it said in the letter, Mr. Speaker, Minister, forcing charities to pay nearly 10% of their profit on fees is ridiculous, and I question why this $50,000 threshold is not higher and why they are being asked to pay such costly audits. Another problem is unnecessary regulations. At one time, service clubs were allowed to sell tickets out of province and over the phone. Today, regulations restrict these sales, leaving them unable to access the lucrative American market and other provinces. Service clubs also have problems with lottery licenses, as municipalities limit the number of licenses issued at any given time. This inhibits them from working on more than one project. The third problem is taxes. Service clubs question why they have to pay so much in tax when they are really a charity. For example, on a car raffle, they have to pay close to $10,000 in taxes for that vehicle. They are also charged lottery license fees costing up to $9,000. On top of this, service clubs that own their own building must pay property taxes, and you can see how these add up. Fourth problem, I wrote to the Minister, is costs associated with being a volunteer. Directors of clubs must have liability insurance. Members must assume the costs of volunteer police checks and many other items. Enticing membership is already a problem for a lot of these groups. The cost of living is making it hard for people to even volunteer. This is a big problem across Ontario. Another concern raised was the OLG's plan for a new casino in the community. The service clubs are concerned that this will take away from their profits. One suggestion was to create a revenue sharing program similar to what already exists in Alberta, where the service clubs provide volunteers in the casino and receive a small fraction of profits. I would appreciate it if you would find out more about this option. Minister, frankly, I was surprised by the amount of issues these clubs identified. It's important to recognize that these are charities working hard to pay for a variety of projects within our communities. That said, I would appreciate it if you would review these problems and respond to me. In the meantime, I would ask that you advise what tax exemptions or assistance is available to help service clubs. Thank you for your attention. Please accept my best wishes, Jim Wilson. Mr. Speaker, following my decision to draft this motion that's before us today, I sent a letter and questionnaire to as many service clubs as I could from right across the province, and the response has been tremendous. Over 100 service clubs responded to the questionnaire, many of them representing several service clubs across a district or area. I think that reveals the extent of public interest for changes to be made. In fact, one letter was from the Lions Club Multiple District A, which represents Lions and Lions clubs across Ontario. The Multiple District A Governors Council held a special meeting to discuss this motion and passed the following resolution. Quote, that the Governor's Council hereby endorses and supports the resolution presented by Jim Wilson, MPP, Simcoe Grey, requesting the Ontario Minister of Finance to immediately move to have a standing committee investigate the legislative and regulatory barriers and burdens facing service clubs in Ontario, and further that Council hereby authorizes the MDA Secretary to forward said resolution of the Premier of Ontario, the interim leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, the leader of the New Democratic Party, and the Ontario Minister of Finance, end of quote. Now, colleagues, I have brought photocopies of all of the responses, and I'd like to give them to Liberal and NDP representatives to use as a reference while working on this issue, and I do that in a non-partisan way. The questionnaire asked 5 questions, but because many of the responses mimic the issues and challenges I already touched on in the letter I just read, the time I have left, Mr. Speaker, I want to focus on the 5th question, What changes could the provincial government make to better facilitate the outstanding work that you and other service clubs do? That was the question. Here's a list of the grassroots suggestions directly from the service clubs. In terms of regulations, the clubs suggested less administrative burden, particularly for clubs with a proven track record. Some of the clubs note that licensing reporting requirements are required at all levels of government for the same project. Other clubs suggest implementing a simpler tax system that volunteers can easily navigate. One club noted that the tax department was even baffled by the complexity of the issue or the regulations. The club suggests the government review the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation's dominance in Ontario's gaming industry and the pressure that it's putting on clubs. They note the provincial government is both the regulator through the Alcohol and Gaming Commission and the primary operator through the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation, often creating unnecessary red tape and duplication. Clubs want more flexibility. One club describes spending months to secure approval for a simple river race of logs and rubber turtles because the guidelines only allow rubber ducks. The Alcohol and Gaming Commission took months to approve the fundraiser. They noted the approval process for that single application required the approval of the municipality, police, Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, the Minister of Natural Resources, and the Minister of the Environment. In terms of taxes and fees, the club suggests tax rebates for non-profit organizations, particularly on HST and property taxes, allowing the clubs to utilize a percentage of fundraising toward their administration. Changes to insurance coverage. Many noted that they often need multiple policies to cover the same event. Service clubs suggest the province give municipalities the ability to grant property tax relief to non-profits, not just registered charities. Also suggested is a tax rebate on the HST. And finally, they would ask that the government make them aware of available grants and programs that might assist them in their daily work. In terms of recruiting volunteers, service clubs suggest, and I would like to thank Wasaga Beach Connect Club for this suggestion, make membership fees tax deductible or creating tax incentives for volunteers. Other service clubs asked for help with a campaign to promote volunteerism and membership drive. Keith White from my riding, who's an honorary Lion and a Legion Associate member, along with being a councillor in Essa Township, suggests that better training on how to recruit and retain volunteers would benefit many clubs. He suggests simply collecting the educational material now available and finding ways to disseminate it across the province. Another idea was the creation of a provincial service club awards program, like apparently they have in Saskatchewan. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope that it's clear that there are a number of issues that need further examination. I anticipate that this is only the beginning of an in-depth discussion. My motion asks that the Minister of Finance move to have a standing committee investigate the legislative and regulatory barriers and burdens facing service clubs, and I hope that the government will agree to do this today. I welcome and encourage the support of all members, and I do realize this is a complex issue. There's many departments of the government involved, but I think we should get moving on it. We need service clubs now more than ever as we face their challenging fiscal climate we find ourselves in the province of Ontario. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So I now recognize the member for Simcoe Grey.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all members who appear to be supporting this resolution and call upon the government that if it does pass today to please implement it. Please set up a committee so we can begin the discussion of how we can better help service clubs. Again, the issues are the impact of new casinos on the profits of service clubs, financial audits. The Minister in his letter suggesting to take that up to the federal government. It's also something we should deal with in the committee, though, and if we got a strong resolution from the committee to do something about it, that would help pressure the federal government. But I will take the Minister up on his suggestion. HST, the need for rebates, property taxes, selling tickets out of province and over the phone that they used to be able to do so they can expand their ticket sales into bigger markets, taxes paid when holding a car raffle, charges amounting to thousands of dollars for lottery licenses, costs associated with being a volunteer, costs of insurance, the taxes they pay on the prize, often a car, for those lotteries, and the list goes on and on and on. Probably best summarized by Bill Rosker from the Kinsman Club of Stayner when he noted that relaxing some of the red tape and tax implications would make his club's operations easier and result in members being able to concentrate on fundraising rather than administration. He suggests that the satisfaction of being part of a social club is being able to give back to the community, and a lessened administrative burden would help to attract more volunteers. Well said, Bill, and thank you for those comments and for filling out the questionnaire. Fact of the matter is there's a lot we can do. I think the best way to do it is through an all-party committee. One of the technicalities in this resolution was the opposition doesn't control the agenda of committees, so I need the Minister of Finance or a minister over there or somebody in the government to make sure we can put this before a committee and study the issue on an all-party basis, and I ask that we do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.